At one time in Scotland, it was thought that when the sun disappears over the horizon and the night lays its black cloak over the land, the dwellers of the underground come out. Fairy belief survived until modern times here in Scotland. Indeed, some would argue that it has never really died out properly. I know someone who genuinely believes that thousands of years ago, before written records, the fairy folk, or the Sidhe as they were known, fought a war against humans. Our race won, and the Sidhe were forced to live in the dark recesses of the earth. We humans are the mortal enemy of the Sidhe, and they have a deep-set and fierce hatred for us. They can see that we are destroying Earth's delicate ecosystem with our greed and destruction of the environment that we both need to survive. He is sure that soon the Sidhe will rise and overturn the power structure and save the planet. I don't know if I believe that, although what I do realise is that we cannot be trusted to save this planet. When I parked up in a lay-by the side of the road in a very beautiful part of the Highlands to film this film for YouTube, there was a car parked behind me. Two middle-aged women were standing behind it and the boot was open. When they left, I looked in my mirror and noticed this pile of black bags dumped by the side of the road. If the Sidhe were indeed watching, then I hope they also saw me pick up 2 old tin cans I found by the side of the loch and take home to dispose of properly. Loch Dochart sits a mile or so to the east of Clanlarich in the Central Highlands. Ben Moor towers over the loch, and I wonder if any of the hundreds of climbers who scale the mountain and look down on the loch realise that Loch Dochart has a great legend involving the Sidhe. This is a very old story. It was recorded as being such in the Downpatrick Recorder newspaper in 1851. At one time in the Highlands, these old tales would be passed around orally. Every clan had a storyteller or shonachan, a bard, who'd keep these stories alive. People would sit around a glowing hearth in the long winter nights and listen to strange tales of heroes, daring deeds and supernatural happenings. Tales of fairies would be widely believed, for all knew the Sidhe to be as real as the clan over the mountain or in the next glen. The Sidhe were respected and feared. This story starts with a young woman standing one night beside Loch Dochart. She is crying and holding a very young baby. The girl is distraught, for the child has been born out of wedlock, and the father of the baby has abandoned both the mother and his offspring. The woman looked down on the sleeping child, and she could see it grimace in pain, for the baby had not been suckling properly and was weak and sickly and dying. The distraught mother laid the baby down at the water's edge amongst the rushes and turned and walked to a nearby stone. Sitting on this stone, she prayed aloud, asking that she didn't witness the death of her child. She couldn't stand it, she couldn't bear it. The young woman, her mind wandered to happier times, when she sat spinning by her mother beside a peat fire. She'd been happy then, before having her heart stolen, being seduced and taken advantage of, with kind words, promises and lies, leaving the shelter of her parents to journey south to live with the southerners in central Scotland. The girl then laid her head down and fell fast asleep, exhausted from days of walking on the road as she travelled back north to her people. She dreamed of her child and angels that had come to collect the infant and take it to heaven. In her dream she pleaded that they should also take her so she could be with her baby, but was told, "No, not yet, it's not your time." The rain woke up the woman. In that moment she decided to get her child and take it home to her parents. She was sure her father would come round, and their mother could help and do something to save the ill child. She looked and saw the baby still lying asleep in the rushes, just as she had left it. The woman only had to jump over a burn that now flowed between her and the reed bed, and she would be with her child. But as she tried to jump the flowing water, her strength failed, and she fell to her knees. Then the woman, to her horror, saw the reed bed slowly float further into Loch Dochart. As she watched the reed island float into the loch, she could hear tiny voices, laughing and then chattering excitedly. The woman frantically screamed and shouted and pleaded for the return of her baby. But this reed island was now almost in the middle of the loch. The mother must have fainted, for she was found lying unconscious at the water's edge the next morning by some herdsmen. The men recognised the woman and took her home to her mother and father. Back with her family, she was nursed to health, but she pined for her child, who, despite a thorough search of Loch Dochart, was never found. Only a piece of the baby's clothing was ever recovered. The locals feared the water had taken the young infant and would release the body in due course. This woman was haunted by the loss of her child. She would often wake up in the middle of the night screaming, my baby, where is my baby?" Locals passing the loch would suddenly see an island about 50 feet in length, where none had been before. Sometimes it would be in the middle of the loch, and another time in a different part of the water, often spotted at one side. The next time it was seen, it would be at the other, or in the middle of the water. The island would even disappear for a few days before returning. The girl sunk into a deep sadness over the loss of her child. One morning, when the mother went to wake her, her bed was empty. A search was made, but no trace of this woman could be found. Weeks went by, and then some fishermen passing this strange floating island scared a large bird from the rushes, and as they investigated, they discovered the decomposing body of this woman. How she could have got to the island in the middle of the loch, as she could not swim, was puzzling. Some thought the island might have appeared or floated near the shore, allowing her to wade out as she searched for her child. Others blamed the fairy folk, for it was widely believed that this strange island was not of this world. Stealing a child and bringing them up to live in their realm was a common feature of the Sidhe. It is said, or was said for many years, that in the middle of the night the sound of a baby's cry can be heard on Loch Dochart, and this cry is often followed by the sound of elfish laughter. And Loch Dochart, for generations, was thought by the locals to be a place to be feared and avoided in the hours of darkness. Loch Dochart sits just off the busy A85, one of the main routes through the Highlands of Scotland, travelling from east to west. So, if you're ever travelling that way, and you're just on the outskirts of Clanlarich to the east, you might like to stop at the side of the loch. Take a walk, a pleasant walk, through a tree-lined track to the water's edge. You might like to cast your mind back to this story and think of this poor woman and her baby, names that have been forgotten through time. But as you stand there, staring into the water's edge, are you being watched? Listen very carefully, and you might just hear the sound of laughter, tiny voices, or the sound of a crying child coming from the reeds that still surround Loch Dochart. If you've enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe. You might like to take one of our dark history tours, ghost tours, or paranormal investigations that are held in Perthshire, Glasgow and Stirling. If so, please visit our website, which is www.historyandhorrortours.com. Thank you.